All right. Hello, ladies. How are you?
Doing
Good.
well. How are you?
Good. So good to see you and have this conversation. Let's start with a quick overview of what it is you do in your business. So please share 2 to 3 quick sentences explaining what your business is and what it offers. Let's start with you, Andrea.
Hi. Thanks again for having me. Great to see you, ladies. So my name is Andrea Harry Bibbs, and I have two businesses. So my first business is the ACB Group, and it is a media and PR consulting firm. So really boutique and work closely with mostly smaller businesses. And then my second business is June Dragonfly. And so that's a curated gifting company, really focused on sourcing products from women owned businesses as well as underrepresented founders. And I just started that a year ago. So, new entrepreneur here.
Awesome. Thanks, Andrea. And Bettina.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's wonderful to join you today. I'm Bettina Benson, founder and creative director of Chloe Kristen. Chloe Kristen is a high end women's clothing line that resides at the intersection of feminine and fierce. And through fashion, I empower women to take control of their narrative and be able to show up as their best selves. And we are also launching the Modern Abstract, which is a more accessibly priced clothing line that is going to offer lifestyle staples for the modern woman.
Wonderful. Thank you. And in addition to being fantastic founders, we are all members of One X League. Just have to throw that plug in there. So let's go ahead and get started. When did you know that it was time to unleash your gifts, your passion, your expertise to the world and officially form a business? Let's start with you, Bettina.
You kind of get that nagging feeling that you're not operating in your sphere of excellence, or whatever is your calling at that time. So I was in medical sales before, and I was like, I have more to offer, and I need to really discover what that is. And so just kind of going on this journey of exploring different options, and then it really went back to, well, what are my needs? Like, what are needs that aren't fulfilled for me on the market, and let's explore if other women have those same needs as well. And came to find out that, and it still is very difficult for women to find lifestyle pieces, especially the working woman. And so before I, quit my job, my full time job, just explored what it would look like to launch this business and create and be able to combine an element of creativity and business. And I just followed, I would say, the breadcrumbs and the signs that given the feedback of when I was presenting the pieces to my target audience and how I felt, operating in this sphere of excellence and operating in my gifts, and decided that that was the right journey for me at that time.
Thank you. And how about you, Andrea?
Yeah, for me, I mean, it was a mix. I think what Bettina was talking about, like sort of knowing deep down that you're destined to do more than what you were doing. I felt that. I was in corporate as well for over 20 years working in media, and I just knew kind of towards the latter part that I was destined to do something else. And so I left about almost a year and a half ago. I ended up taking an exit package, and I didn't know what I was going to do. I never saw myself as an entrepreneur. I saw that as other people. I saw myself as corporate person, right? But after a couple months, some situations happen to you and certain things happen. And what was happening was people were coming to me like, hey, I'd love to you to work on this project. I'd love for you to work on that project. And that actually pushed me to form my LLC and start consulting my first business, the ACB Group. And then clients just kept coming because at the core of me, I think I was always a storyteller at heart. And so when people were coming to me to say, hey, can you help tell my story? I was like, sure, I can. And so I started doing that. And then fast forward a few more months after that, I had a birthday, not big birthday yet, but it was a significant one. And
Mhm.
I just kind of felt like, you know what? Time is not slowing down. And if I wasn't sure if I was going to go back to corporate or not, but for over 10 years, I had this dream about doing a gifting business. I had a passion for like really finding unique gifts, really looking at, especially supporting women founders, underrepresented founders, and finding things that when I would gift the gift, like just seeing folks' face were like, where did you get this? Or how did you get this? Or how did you remember I said that? I felt like that was my gift. And so I just said, you know what, let me start this company. And so I filed the papers, I registered July 7th, and I said, I'm going to start in 2024. And I didn't even have a chance to start. So that was 2023. And honestly, it was people that they heard what I was doing, or I would just talk about, and they said, can I hire you? And that's what happened. They're like, I don't care if you haven't figured that out. I don't care if you have, I'll wait. And it was a blessing. And so started getting some corporate clients and then some individual clients, and have just hit the road. So without a business plan, so some of those things that, you know, you feel like you should have, like I felt like, especially coming from a corporate background, I need to have all these things. I need to have my business plan together. I need to have my strategy. And I just started because I also felt like, honestly, I started seeing people around me, loved ones, friends passing away who were younger than me, or, you know, or it was sudden. I just felt like, you know, I need to just do this now. And so it's, you know, it hasn't been an easy ride, but you know, it's been definitely surprising, and I love what I'm doing. So I'm excited about it.
Nice. So many nuggets there. One, people will show you your gifts even when you don't know. When people continue to
Mhm.
come to you to do things and you're like, "Oh, like sure." That's sort of like telling you that's where you shine, that's where your strengths are. And then another thing is, I think a lot of times as women, we want to, have things be perfect before we launch. For you, luckily, people didn't give you that option because many of us we would wait, business plan, like all the things. They're like, let's just do it now. And one thing I've learned for sure is that executing on something is usually better than just waiting because there is no perfect time, there is no perfect process, system, product. You have to put it out there and get feedback. So thank you for sharing that. Great stuff.
You're welcome.
So, who do you turn to when you need business insight or encouragement? Let's start with Tina.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand that, first of all, there are people that do want to help you. I think as women, we often want to and feel like we should handle everything ourselves, that we are the queens of figuring it out. And that's a cape that I personally have had to take off and really understand that it's important for me to be strategic, and who's going to be on my personal board of directors. And so, um, and those are the people that I would go to, for troubleshooting issues, or the people. You have to understand the people that have the bandwidth when you just need to vent, when you're feeling scared, when you're feeling emotional. And as part of that, there are groups like OXL, and some women's groups. And I also think it's important to understand that there's a season, for everything. And so it might be, whereas someone on your personal board of directors maybe had the bandwidth at once to kind of be that role, or fill in that role for you, and vice versa. And then we have to understand when we kind of have to step back from that and focus on maybe what we have going on in our business, or maybe what we have going on in our family. But I think it's highly important to really identify that personal board of directors, and also be able to identify what role you are able to play in being on others' personal board of directors.
Exactly. So true. How about you, Andrea?
Yeah, similar to Bettina, I do have that personal board of directors. But I do think that it shifted a lot with entrepreneurship, and I added some more entrepreneurs to that
Smart.
mix because I really hadn't surrounded myself with too many entrepreneurs. And, you know, there's so many things that, although I can get the support first from some other friends and family, but if they're not in the entrepreneurship space, it can be hard for them to lend support for some tricky things, right?
Mhm.
So I think it's been really, really helpful for me to be in groups like OXL and some other women's groups, um, with that have entrepreneurs to really help me in a lot of different ways. And I've similar to what Bettina was saying, throughout my entire career, I've never been the one that wants to take. I'm more the one that's, give. And so, you have to be even more mindful than ever. I think that in this space, to make sure that you are really trying to help your fellow, especially entrepreneurs, when they need help and support, or just someone to listen to. Um, but yeah, I think what's been most helpful has been really some of my other kind of entrepreneur, especially female entrepreneurs around me. But it doesn't discount, my family and friends who have that ear for me when I need it, when I feel like I want to give up,
Hmm.
who tell me not to, or who push or refer people to me for, as clients, because they're like, I don't want you to give up. We're going to send someone your way, things like that are things I'll never forget.
Yeah, so true. It's smart too that your personal board of directors changes as your life evolves and changes as well because your needs are changing. And
Absolutely.
something else you said, making sure that you have entrepreneurs that you can speak to. There's something about this entrepreneurial journey that unless you are one, you don't really get it, and you can't sometimes offer solutions or advice. Sometimes people might actually dissuade you because you have to be a little bit crazy to be an entrepreneur.
Yes.
And, all these normal people who don't get it, will tell you, oh, that's too much, or, maybe to give up before you should. I'm going to remember his name in a second, but I read about him and he said that he experienced foreclosure 14 times. Today, he's a billionaire.
Oh yeah.
Imagine what people were saying to him who weren't entrepreneurs at the 11th like foreclosure, like Byron
Yes.
Allen, but
Yeah.
you just this passion, this talent, this skill, this crazy in you that's telling you to keep it moving, and then success comes many times. I mean, sometimes it doesn't, but we have had conversations about that too. People whose hobbies are really not businesses, and
Yeah.
all the things. Anyway, that's why it's good to have a board of directors, resources, guidance, to kind of help us think through things. So,
Absolutely. There's
And
always a way.
Sade, I think it's important,
mhm,
what you said about the entrepreneurship journey. I myself, in the very beginning, and I was younger. I think this journey has made me so much wiser and spurred this evolution of me as a woman that I'm so proud of, that I never would have journeyed on had I stayed where I was. But
mhm,
when you're talking to the wrong people that really don't understand, and you're not accepting that this is a different journey that I'm on, you find yourself in the position of trying to convince people, and you
yes,
never want to be in that situation.
yeah,
I think we know deep down inside, and there's something to be said for being in touch with yourself and being in alignment, that we know we're on the right path, and it's not our job to convince anyone. But
yeah,
I think when you move tables and build your own or go sit at a different table, that community can make all of the difference.
hmm
Absolutely.
And being understanding that you're coming asking for help and solutions, as opposed to then finding yourself trying to convince someone that you are doing the right thing, that you're not crazy,
right.
etc.
Or you might be crazy, but you're supposed to be a little kind of
That you're
crazy.
Right.
supposed to be a little crazy. Yeah.
You
You
don't want them.
will.
You don't want to have to
Exactly.
convince them, and you don't want them to convince you to kind of walk away either if it's not what you're supposed to
Hmm.
be.
No. Because I think especially like making that pivot from corporate to entrepreneurship, like there's so many people that want to continue to see you a certain way. I
Yes.
was attached to a major brand. And so it's also interesting how you notice like how people interact with you, right? Like,
Hmm.
and after you kind of, have decided to do something different. So you absolutely need people who are going to, be there to not convince you to go back, especially if you said you don't want to at that moment. I've had people
Hmm.
continue to send me job descriptions, no, or jobs, and I'm like,
Hmm.
that's great. But right now I'm focusing on this. So you definitely have to also really just have this belief in yourself. And for me, like Bettina, like what you were saying, this journey has made me grow in so many different ways. I think, when you're in corporate, sometimes you can lack some confidence as if you're in places where they say, oh, you don't have those skills to move up, or you don't have this or that. And so when you decide to bet on yourself, it can be scary, but it can also be magical because, I think there are sometimes when you are in those corporate spaces, you may not feel like you can make such a sharp pivot like
Mhm.
like you do when you're in entrepreneurship. So I feel like, I'm very proud of myself to make a shift to do something that I did dream about, but I never necessarily thought I would act on. And so I'm glad I did.
Awesome. All right. So, has there been a challenging moment or period of time when you considered giving it all up? And you don't have to say like what the time was or what the thing was, but sort of like just has there been that moment? How about you, Bettina?
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's more or less of a sign for me. What I realized is that when I felt that way, I was not in alignment. And it is more so about my mindset was more so about what it should look like or what I wanted it to look like as opposed to what it is. And, there was a time where I really, and this is recent, like I really, and I heard somebody else say it a couple times, like I stopped medical sales to start a clothing brand. Like, and I was like, oh, wow, that's a big leap. And so I think drinking my own Kool-Aid a little bit as opposed to taking pride and not drinking my own Kool-Aid was good for me in a healthy way to really acknowledge what it is that I did, the leap that I made, and what it is that I still continue to do, and really staying in my lane. I think whenever I kind of get outside of my lane, um, I know it by what I'm feeling. And
Mm,
so that's just I would say kind of a gift from the universe to kind of be like, yellow light,
yeah.
stop, red light, recenter, refocus.
Yes, and you said something too about expectations, which I think is so important. A lot of times people go into entrepreneurship and think, I'm going to do X, I'm going to make this amount of money. And then when troubles come, or even if they don't hit certain, revenue targets, if troubles come, it feels like, why is this happening to me? Oh my gosh, when that is such a part of the process. But if you don't expect it, you feel like you're either failing or you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. So speaking to other entrepreneurs, is really, really helpful. I use that analogy that it's like going outside, it's raining, you don't have an umbrella, you come back wet, and you're like, oh, like why am I wet? Like you're going to get, it's a part of it. Like it's just a,
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
have to be realistic about that. It doesn't make it easier per se, but you sort of expect it and can navigate through it quicker and don't let it ruin your entire day. You just figure out how to get through it. But how about you, Andrea? Ever thought of throwing in the towel?
Absolutely. I have to be honest, it's hard, especially when, when you like for me, I feel like I followed the rules my entire life, like followed the rules or what we were taught were the rules my whole life.
Mhm.
Always got good grades, great internships, great college, got a great job that I stayed at for, almost a quarter of a century, so all those sort of things that, it was sort of following the rules. So this is has felt like sort of outside of myself in some ways, but in
Mhm.
other ways feels like exactly where I should be. um but it is hard because it goes back and forth. I mean, I don't feel like I was ever tied to titles or necessarily the paycheck, but it
Mhm.
can be eye opening when you when you work so hard on things. I mean, and then you might get a small return initially, but what I have found is like it might be a small return initially, but there might be something better, or there usually is something much better down the line.
Mhm.
So yeah, for me, it's been back and forth. I'm having less of those moments now, but I'm still early in the game, so probably having it more often than Shakina. So that's why I definitely like need that, um, that kind of team around me to pump me up when I need it, and I'm there for them as their cheerleaders too on those days when it can be frustrating or hard. But for me, when I see the joy in my clients or the client of a client who receives a gift, for example, that's honestly, that reminds me of why I'm doing what I'm doing. So, but yeah, it can be tough.
Understand that.
Sade, can you hear the dog?
Absolutely. Okay. It's all good. Oh,
Well, I was just gonna say, like, even though I made what seemed like just a really huge pivot from sort of being an executive in media to going to, consulting, and then, and now doing gifting. What I've had to remind myself though is like the core of who I was always there, even in some of the other roles I had. So I got into media because I loved storytelling, and I feel like that storytelling piece, and I loved connecting people and all of that. And I feel like that is so present in in the jobs or in the businesses that I built now, So sometimes I think it's also looking at sort of like some of those core things to remind you of like this is also where you should be. So for me, like the gifting, I'm like it is, I tell a story when I put together these gift boxes. I feel like I tell a story with the products, and then obviously tell the story of the founders as well. So I think for folks who are thinking about entrepreneurship and like nervous about it, it's like just really think about sort of those core gifts, right? Like similar to what you were saying, that can kind of bleed into what you're doing next, even if it feels like completely different.
so what's been one of the best moments for your business so far this year? How about you, Bettina?
One of the well, one of the best moments is we launched a strategy for Chloe Kristen to really get the product in front of our target demographic, and it's just being able to interface with the women that we create for. And we were at one conference, a leadership conference last week, and by the end of the conference, everybody was calling the Bridget pan the magic pan, and it never gets old seeing the way people respond to that pan that I designed 7 years ago. Um, and so just being able, like every time the brand is introduced to a new client, like that magical moment happens, and I'll never, take that for granted. And I'm very grateful for that.
Nice. And how about you, Andrea?
So for me, I think it's to be continue to be in business. It's been a huge thing. And I so my background, I grew up playing sports and being an athlete, and thought I would, you know, be in sports for my even my whole media career. I started in sports, and it's always been a big part of my life. And so this year, I got my first NBA client, corporate client, NBA team corporate client. And I will say all of this is without an e-commerce site. So I'm working on that now. It's being finalized. So, there's so many, again, like so many things you might say in your head, like, oh, I need to have my site up together. I need to have my capability deck together. And how this happened was someone on the Chicago Bulls executive team got one of my boxes as a gift and showed it to the team. And they reached out to me um, to see if I could, help curate some gifts for a big event that they were having for Black History Month. And so ended up curating some boxes for their event, and that were all actually Black women owned brands that were in the boxes that some of their guests received at their event last month. So I was very proud of that moment, especially again as a solopreneur and someone who never even, I really, when I started June Dragonfly, I didn't even really think about corporate clients. I was thinking about serving women who liked the things that I liked. And, it was going to be a quarterly box. And so my business model, and so that's where I think that I'm very grateful that I didn't have this like concrete business model because I've evolved it so much even in these past few months. So that was a huge accomplishment. But I will say that I'm also very, very grateful for the other corporate clients who were the first ones to reach out to me and not say no. um, and hired me for some of their projects over the holidays too. So super grateful for all of my clients, but was super excited to have my first NBA team client.
Yes, nice. There's something powerful about the ability to pivot and not be so hung up on what you wrote down and it has to be this way, especially if it's not working. And sometimes customers and requests coming to you would help you understand how you do need to make the change.
Exactly. And I think my
Yeah.
background in news and sports, and knowing that sometimes things are sometimes it's you gotta you have to deliver sometimes in a short timeline. And so I was proud of also being able to really, deliver what they needed within a couple days, honestly. So that's where some of those corporate skills, it
Mhm.
just kicks in.
Yes, for sure. This has been fantastic. So, where can everyone find you, find your business, find your products? Let's start with you, Andrea.
So you can find me on LinkedIn, also on Instagram and websites, JuneDragonflyBox.com. Soon to have e-commerce, but you can still reach out to me on there.
Yes, proof that business is happening with or without the site. So, just goes
Yes,
to show
yes.
how good
It's
it
happening
is.
in the emails and the DMs and
That's right.
everywhere.
That is right. It's the new day.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Bettina.
You can find me on LinkedIn, and you can also find us at chloekristen.com as well as Instagram.
Awesome. Thank you, ladies, so much. I appreciate your time. This conversation has been so great, and I know it's going to help a lot of people who are at different stages of either entrepreneurship or considering entrepreneurship. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having
Thank
us.
you.